Welcome into a new edition of Talkin Dawgs here on YouTube and also 247sports.com. This is Robbie Falk from Mississippi State's site on 247 Sports. I cover Mississippi State for 247 and also for the Starkville Daily News. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with Mississippi State women's basketball, how this program has gotten to the point that it is right now, and how it's going to be fixed, if it is going to be fixed for Mississippi State. We'll jump right into it. First of all, I want to invite you guys to subscribe to this channel if you aren't already. You should be able to subscribe just below. There should be an area there where you can click subscribe. I'd really appreciate it if you guys can do that to support what I'm trying to do here on YouTube. And also, we want you to come check us out at 247 Sports, where you get all things Mississippi State on a daily basis, the best coverage of Mississippi State out there. And it also allows you to see other sites and see what's going on in other places. The best deal in sports right now for fans is 247 Sports, so come check us out there if you aren't already. I'm pretty sure most of you probably already are. But big news coming out of Starkville on Monday night. Rickea Jackson has decided to transfer, Mississippi State's top scorer and a junior forward for the Bulldogs, who has done a lot of things since she's been in Starkville. Now she's deciding to go off in a different direction and finish out her career in college sports. It was a shock for a lot of people. For others, maybe not so much, that Rickea Jackson is departing the program. This is something that a lot of people thought was a possibility as things have deteriorated at Mississippi State. And we got a few things digging around and asking people around the program, and those close to a lot of people around the program. We got a few details on how this transpired for Mississippi State. And Rickea Jackson came out. There was a lot of fans that were upset after this happened. She came out and talked a little bit about the fans that had called her a quitter and said she was quitting the team. I can confirm with multiple sources that a lot of this was not Rickea's decision. I think Mississippi State and Rickea have decided to go in opposite directions. There was a lot of tension building around the team. Coach Doug Novak has spoken on a lot of that tension in recent weeks, and it kind of played out a little bit on national television against Ole Miss. There's been some tension around this team and around this roster, and it's been building for quite some time. It's escalated a little bit over the last few months since the roster's kind of been retooled with transfers and the coaching change and all that stuff. I think that's really kind of intensified over recent weeks, but there's some obvious tension within the roster and even within, some of the coaching staff on this team that has allowed things to kind of deteriorate a little bit further for Mississippi State. And I feel like that it was just best for all parties for, Rickea to go in a different direction. And for Mississippi State, that is a tough blow. Rickea is going to be fine. She's going to land on her feet somewhere. For Mississippi State, in the immediate term, that's another potential star player that you have off this roster that can't help you moving forward in a roster that is already just gutted at this point. So to kind of reset things for those that might be casual observers of this program, Mississippi State had a national championship caliber team program under Vic Schaefer. He took the Bulldogs from towards the bottom of the SEC to the very top in just a few short years. They were in the NCAA tournament in year 3 under Vic Schaefer. They were ranked in year 3, and then took them to the national championship. They defeated Connecticut in the Final Four. They lost the South Carolina national title. The next year, they win the SEC for the first time in school history. They go to the national championship again. They come up just short against Notre Dame in a game that they had a chance to win. But so many great players coming through, so many players that really kind of embodied Vic Schaefer's style. Defensive, hard-nosed, good team players, gritty players. And those players really kind of ascended Mississippi State to where it was. And when State got that status as a national championship caliber team, I feel like they started going a little further away from who they were as a team. The type of players that they got, they started chasing stars maybe more than they did the players that kind of built that program. And I think that's been a contributing factor. You have a lot of different style players than you originally had. I'm not taking a shot at those players, but these aren't the same style players that Vic Schaefer had coming through that helped them get to national title. And I think that's been a contributing factor. There's been a lot of factors that have happened. But, Vic Schaefer leaves Mississippi State, goes to Texas kind of unexpectedly, right in the middle of the pandemic. And there was a lot of bad blood during that time too, with how all that went down, and Mississippi State losing its best coach in a lot of people's minds on campus. So Vic leaves. They hired Nikki Pinson, who had a pretty good resume when you look back at it. She was a national championship assistant coach, helped build that program with Dawn Staley at South Carolina. Of course, everybody knew who she was in the women's college basketball game as a player because she played under Pat Summitt and was an All-American for Pat Summitt at Tennessee. Went to the WNBA, was a Team USA player in the WNBA, and was a very well-respected person within the women's basketball community. She had just gone to Old Dominion, spent 3 years there, had a team that was competing for the NCAA tournament and conference championships after they had really struggled before she had arrived. So it really felt like on paper this was a really good hire for Mississippi State, and it didn't quite work out for the Bulldogs how they hoped. You had transfers, you had players that were suspended for at least a half or for a game, that we weren't privy to things that were going on behind the scenes, but you could just tell things were really starting to deteriorate fast for Mississippi State, going from a team that was going to be the year before possibly a Sweet 16 Elite 8 team to the next year when you have most of that roster returning and you go 10-9 or whatever they did and you miss out on postseason altogether. So that was the first real signs that things were starting to fall apart for Mississippi State, and then it got significantly worse as the year went on. They started losing players. They lost 6 players in the transfer portal, a couple of which really would have helped this roster this year. You lost a big piece in Aaliyah Matharu. You lost a big piece in sophomore Madison Hayes, who I thought was back towards the mold that Vic Schaefer had really built his teams around. I thought Madison Hayes kind of fit that bill of a type of player that you really need, and she could really help this roster right now, just the defensive intensity that she brings and the rebounding ability. Some of those things, some of these players that Mississippi State has lost over the last 3 or 4 years, those are players that would really help this roster right now, and they need those type of players. They just don't have those players right now. So, you lose those 6 players in the transfer portal. Nikki Pinson went out and got some really good scorers in the portal at guard with Kayla Jordan coming from Tulane, Anastasia Hayes and her 2 sisters, Alacia and Aislinn, both come in as well. Raven Farley, a backup player at, I think, Rutgers. And you just did not, I don't think that they filled their needs enough in the post to really make a difference this year. And that got worse too. When Jessica Carter was arrested in the fall for assault charges, and, she's been very public about some of the mental health issues that she's had since that time. And obviously our prayers are with her to get better. And I've heard that things are really going much better for her. She's been in communication with Mississippi State. She's been back on campus as well for a possibility to return. And I'm just pulling for Jessica to be happy again and to have a good life the rest of the way. But it would be really cool to see her return to Mississippi State too. And do what she loves. But you're really missing that piece right now. Jessica Carter, a true center in the post, somebody that could come down the floor and be a true threat on the offensive end. Mississippi State doesn't have that. Danae Carter is probably one of the toughest players that they have out there right now, and their best rebounder, and she's 6 foot going up against 6'4", 6'5" players every game. And she's winning her fair share, but she's already at a disadvantage because of the size differential. And Mississippi State just does not have right now the players down low to really make a difference there. So now you have a team full of guards that is at a disadvantage every single night. And with Rakia now gone at 6'2", that's another piece. So she was playing forward. That's another big piece gone for the Bulldogs. So She announced her decision. She was leaving Mississippi State on Monday night, and Mississippi State is now down to 8 available players. Raven Farley is currently not with the team, from what I understand. She's out, so they're down to 8 players. And they've played with 7 or 8 players twice this year and won the ball game both times. But this is going to be really tricky for Mississippi State. And I tweeted about it the other night. I do not envy Doug Novak at all. This guy was thrust into a situation that nobody expected. I mean, he was hired at the start of the fall. He was hired as the associate head coach to come in, and he even mentioned it during his press conference. He just wanted to come in, help Mississippi State the best that he could, and go from there. And within a few short weeks, Nikki Pinson steps down, and he's elevated to an interim head coach. He doesn't even hardly know these players at this point. He doesn't hardly know anything about these players. They had not been able to build a relationship or anything, and he's coming in now, and he's got to be the lead voice on this team. That's tough. That's really tough. And a guy coming in from men's basketball, you have to adjust a lot of things when you come into the women's game. He has not coached women's basketball before, but I think Doug Novak is doing the best possible job that anybody could expect him to do under these circumstances. And he's had to navigate COVID. He's had to navigate things behind the scenes, the tension that we mentioned. He's had to navigate those things. This has just been an impossible job for Doug Novak. For him to be at this point 11-6 or 11-7, whatever they are right now, with a couple SEC wins, I think he deserves a lot of credit for trying to hold the ship together. But it's getting more difficult for them to steer this. I mean, this is, at this point, you're down to 8 players. You have to have 7 to play a ball game. There are 2 players going down or transferring or whatever away from not being able to complete this season. So, I mean, this is a tough situation for Mississippi State, and nobody could have ever expected this to happen with the way that things were going under Vic Schaefer. This program's just crumbled so quickly from a team that was competing for national championships year in and year out and hosting an NCAA tournament every year. That was in expectations. They were expected to go to the SEC tournament final. They did that, I think, 5 straight years. So these expectations were through the roof for Mississippi State, and now you've gone from that to you don't know what to expect from this team now. This program, if you just win a ball game in the SEC now, all of a sudden, that's a big deal. And that's kind of where this program is. It's sad to have seen it fallen this quickly. As somebody that's been covering this team since they went to that first WNIT, that was, when I first jumped into covering this team, to go into 2 Final Fours and 3 or 4 Sweet 16 trips, following this team all over the country. It was really fun to watch this team grow and build under Vic Schaefer. And now to get to this, where every single day you're just expecting something bad to happen, it's remarkable. I haven't seen very many programs fall this quickly for Mississippi State, and how this has gone. So where do they go from here? How do they fix this? It's not going to be fixed this year, and it's probably not going to be fixed next year. This is a big rebuild for Mississippi State, but with the transfer portal, the way that it is at this point, it can be fixed quickly. It really can, with the right coaching hire, and I think that's where all eyes turn to now. What does Mississippi State do with this program? There's a lot of people out there that don't understand that Mississippi State women's basketball and women's basketball just about everywhere actually spends more money than it's making. This is a sport that's non-revenue, that's not pulling in a lot of money. Even when Mississippi State was competing for national championships, there wasn't a whole lot of money coming in. Tickets are not very high. There's not a whole lot of money coming from, the SEC or anything like that. So these programs, you have to make that decision. If you want to compete and you want to spend a lot of money on it, you're going to lose money somewhere down the line. And so, there's a lot of people that don't understand that. So you can't just go out there and throw $3 million at a coach and go get, the best of the best. That doesn't make feasible sense in a lot of ways. But you can do your homework and go find a really good coach and pay them pretty well at Mississippi State. I think that John Cohen is still willing to spend some good money on a coach to make sure that this program doesn't, completely fall apart, which is where it's kind of headed right now, especially if there's another hire that doesn't really work out. So for Mississippi State, I think John Cohen is doing his homework on this. And listen, I did not disagree at all with the hire that he made with Nikki Pinson. In hindsight, it did not work out. But I thought on paper she was a really good hire for Mississippi State. It made sense. And sometimes they just don't work out. And the same thing happened with Joe Moorhead. That hire made sense. The national media thought it made sense. Coaches out there in the rest of the country thought it made sense. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. It doesn't mean that those coaches are bad coaches. It doesn't mean that they don't know how to do their job. Sometimes things are just oil and water, and they don't mix and they don't work out. And for Mississippi State, this was just with the pandemic coming in, the roster, and all that stuff. I think it was just a perfect storm for bad things to happen for Mississippi State, and this has just not been a very good few months for the Bulldogs. But John Cohen has the ability here, and he's had time now to start reaching out. And from everything that we've heard, he does have a list. He's started reaching out to a lot of these coaches, and he's in the process of making a coaching hire. And I believe that will happen relatively soon, right after the season. I think we'll have some news on that pretty quickly. We're going to be on top of this, just like we were with Nikki Pinson, and how all that played out. We will be on top of this the whole way. We'll try to gather some names and put together a hot board pretty quickly, especially as the season's kind of winding down. We'll try to have that for you and have some names to keep an eye on. But everything that we've heard is they're targeting a head coach. They want a coach to come in here from another program, knowing what they're doing and coming in and trying to rebuild this thing. It's a job that in many ways is very attractive because the fan support can be there for this program. That Mississippi State can spend some money on this program, and that you can recruit here. But in other ways, this is a very daunting job. You got to come in and you have to be comparable to a guy that was beloved by this fan base almost as much as any other coach in the history of the school in any sport. I mean, Vic Schaefer was a beloved coach at Mississippi State, and his shadow is still cast over this program, good or bad. So, I think that still is out there. That there's a lot of expectations that have come with this job of late, and it's going to be a tough sell for some coaches, especially some sitting Power 5 coaches. But there's a lot of coaches out there that are going to want this opportunity, that are going to want to coach in the SEC at a place like Mississippi State. That if you get the right roster with this transfer portal, you can build this thing pretty quickly. So I think that's the key. I think they need to make a hire relatively quick, right after the season is done. And I think they need to start hitting that transfer portal hard. They're going to have to rebuild this entire roster. I mean, I have no clue who is going to return on this team next year to really know what this team could be. Jessica Carter's still out there. Maya Taylor has the option to come back for another year, but does she want to deal with this for one more year? I don't know. You have a really good piece in Jacayla Jordan. If she wants to return, who knows? Danae Carter, I think, is a great piece to build around, a player that's really going to work her tail off, be good on both ends. She needs to develop a little more, but she's just a freshman. She's leading the team in rebounding, and I really like what she brings to the table. So, there's some pieces there, but this roster, no doubt, is going to have to be rebuilt next season. You're talking about maybe 8 to 10 players coming out of the portal that you're going to have to bring in. Right now, you only have one high school recruit, and you have a transfer, Eliza Winston, coming over from Michigan State. Those are the only two players that you feel pretty good about being on this team next year. Who knows what's going to happen with the current roster and who's going to come in. And that's a lot of spots to fill. Mississippi State has to fill them in the post. They have to fill them a guard, possibly a point guard. There's just a lot of question marks about that team, and I think it all starts with the coach. You get the coach in here, and then you figure it out from there. There's going to be a few months there where that coach can build the roster with some talent out of the portal and possibly in the recruiting class as well. But it can be built. It can be rebuilt. This team can still be what Mississippi State wants it to be, but I think this coaching hire is critical for John Cohen to try to get this thing back on track. But they will be doing it without Rickea Jackson, another player gone, just 2 years removed from Vic Schaefer's team. Only one player remains, and that's Maya Taylor. She's been on the 3 staff. She's endured a whole lot on this team and been a leader on this team from the start, been a positive influence. I give a lot of credit to Maya Taylor for sticking this out and for just keeping her head down and doing her thing. I mean, this is a tough situation, but it is what it is. And there's no doubt that there could be, more heavy winds and bad weather ahead, but at some point there's got to be a light at the end of the tunnel for Mississippi State, and we will be there to cover it. So thank you guys for tuning into this. I just wanted to stop in and give kind of my thoughts on this situation and how all this stuff has transpired, and the deterioration of Mississippi State. I don't blame on one single person. I think there's a lot of things that have happened with this program over the last 3 years that have contributed to this. And I think there's a lot of people to blame. There's a lot of things to blame. But I don't think it's fair to blame just one person. It's not fair to blame Rickea Jackson or Vic Schaefer or Nikki McFarlane or John Cohen. I just think there's a lot of things that have gone in to make this a perfect storm for things to just really fall apart for Mississippi State. But we'll see what happens the rest of the way. We will be right on top of it. Don't forget to come check us out over there at 247. We got plenty of things going on over there right now. And, of course, we have something on this YouTube channel every week regarding Mississippi State. So don't forget to subscribe right below to make sure you're up to date on all that stuff. Appreciate you guys for checking in. We'll stop by, who knows when, but we'll stop by to talk Mississippi State sports soon. And I appreciate you guys for supporting this and for checking us out. Have a good one.